Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be running all of my Amtrak locomotives. This is a video I thought I'd do for all of my American viewers out there, since I did a video running all of my VIA locomotives, but I've yet to do one for the Amtrak ones, so here it is. Anyway, I've put them all out in an order which I believe is somewhat chronological in terms of timing, so we begin with this small Amtrak DDT switcher. And then two different types of, well, we've got an F7, I believe, and then right beside that is a E9 locomotive. And then we've got a Amtrak F40, and then a P42, and finally my newest Amtrak locomotive, which is an Acela. I'm not sure the exact model of which, but it's an Acela nonetheless. Anyway, we're going to be running all of these, starting with the oldest one, the DDT switcher. Let's get started. So I'm pretty sure that Amtrak didn't actually have any DDT switchers like this one. Having said that, I believe the era these would have been operating would have been about maybe the late 60s would have, I think, been around when the DDT switchers were more common. I could be mistaken on that. Amtrak was obviously formed in 1971, but if they were around then, I assume this is what they might be using for some reason. I don't know. Maybe moving cars around a station. Think of something, I guess. But anyway, here's this one. It's an old RSO locomotive. It's doing it. It's a fine little locomotive. So there's that one. Next up, we've got a locomotive which I know they did use. I believe it's either an F7. I think it's an F7, but I could be mistaken on that. I don't know. It might be slightly different, but it's certainly an F unit of some kind. Anyway, they definitely did use these in their earlier days, so this is a prototypical model, theoretically. And this one's a old Athearn blue box, so it actually runs pretty well. This is an older Athearn blue box as well. It's got the silver motor, but it runs fine nonetheless. So there's that fine model. I'm not entirely sure if they had any E9s. I suspect that they probably did. I haven't searched it up, to be honest with all of you, but I think this is a genuine model as well, so that's sort of interesting. This model is by Model Power, and I'm quite a fan of it, actually. I really like the E8s and E9 locomotives. They're just sort of interesting. I really like F units, so this is just, to me, an oversized F unit, which, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely fantastic. And it runs fine. Could probably use a little bit of oil, honestly, but it's a good runner. So there's that one. Certainly has some good rolling resistance. Anyway, we've got something a little bit more modern. I believe this is what Amtrak would have been using probably from about the 80s all the way through to the 2000s. They're still using these, but in this particular paint scheme, I believe this is the 80s or 90s. I'm no expert, I'm sure, as most people can tell, but that would be about what I would estimate. Anyway, we're gonna get this thing going. One thing I really do like about this particular model, which just so happens to be a Bachmann, for some reason the original owner put a figure on the back. I haven't removed it because I think it gives the locomotive some character, but just sort of a really random thing about this particular locomotive. And you can see it's also a fine runner. So there's that one. Now this next one is the P42. I think Amtrak was using these from, I know the last P42s were made in 2001, so sometime in the 90s to 2001 is when they started putting these into service. They're still in service today. And this particular model happens to be another Athearn blue box, although it's more modern than the F unit. Yeah, it's a fine runner. I only paid 20 bucks for this thing back in, like, I don't know, 2012, so I shouldn't expect too much from it, but it is a nice model. I really do like the P42s as well. I think they are quite a nice model, and the paint scheme, as far as I'm concerned, just looks great on this one. So there's that. And now finally we've got possibly my favorite Amtrak locomotive in my collection. It's kind of cool because America doesn't have a lot of high-speed rails, so this all is an interesting thing I find. This particular model, though, is a little bit notorious on the channel. Has one day during a live stream, it actually took a flight off the layout when I was running it too fast. Pretty tragic, but it did survive. I had to put it all back together, but it is still a fine runner today. Surprisingly quiet. And I believe Amtrak was... I think Amtrak put this into circulation in the year 2000, if I'm not mistaken. It was I think it was a 50-50 effort between Alstom and Bombardier to build these Acela trains, so that's sort of interesting as well, I find. But yeah, it's a really slick looking locomotive. I mean, it should have some cars behind it, but unfortunately the coupler is broken on this model. As I said earlier, it has had a bit of a rough go at it. But anyway, that was all of my Amtrak trains. I hope you all enjoyed, and a lot of fun running them today. And yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed watching. So that's going to be it for today's video.